2024.
It's upon us. Year of the Dragon, I think.
Wood dragon.
Wood dragon?
It's like a special dragon. My wife is Chinese, and so this is a big thing in our Chinese family is the year of, I believe it's the wooden dragon.
Cool.
I'll get back to you, episode 5.
Episode 5, we'll touch base on that. But for now, episode 4, first one of the year.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year. Everything's going well on your side? As much as one can expect?
Yeah, life goes on.
Yep. We're 2 days after Blue Monday here too. So
yeah, that's a thing.
That is a thing.
Yeah.
So we're getting back into it though, for the most part. And I guess with the new year, sometimes it's fun to sort of look back on the last year and the impact it had, how much you've kind of changed over that time. And so I am curious for you, James, if you have any highs and lows from last year. What was maybe something that stuck out to you as a positive and something that stuck out to you as a negative?
Great question. Okay, so I'll try to keep this clear and concise, but there were two things that stood out as positive for me in a very challenging year in real estate. The first thing was as we were geared in, I think it was in Q3, maybe even early Q4, things were just falling apart. I had a buyer and we had a place locked up. Things were just going south. No activity, no action. I took it upon myself to put a creative solution and tried to bring 3 different parties together to ultimately have the end goal of everyone being happy. Mm-hmm. A buy, a sell, and I think someone had to also buy and sell. I got 3 agents on a conversation, just talking outright of how to create a solution. I think we're all just like, this is it. This is my number. I can't do anything about it. Let's wash our hands. My clients really love this place. So, I was at the finish line and I can at least say I did everything in my power to get this done for my clients. It didn't happen, but I was left with such a feeling that I'm not just a realtor who just says, is this the house? Write the contract and move on. So I felt really good about the work I put into that. And I even got some praise back, which felt nice in a market where realtors maybe don't get a lot of praise. I'll leave it at that, but it was just a good experience for me to know that I've just expended everything I had to make sure I did everything I could. Second thing was I closed on my new house, which is the farmhouse, which was a 2.5-year negotiation, and I finally got it for what I wanted. I'm in there now, so that's it. Lows, just a challenging year in general, dealing with all my clients, whether they couldn't buy or they couldn't sell. But it's a new year and the outlook is decent. I don't know what to really expect, but I just want to make sure that I've got my clients' best interests in front of me and we can move forward in a positive manner. What about you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, I guess to start with the lows maybe, this 2023, I should say, was the first time in a few years where I've had to go back to having some tough conversations with sellers, right? Things weren't selling right away. Mm-hmm. So if we had a purchase in place and we're relying on a sale and things weren't quite going well, it's tough. It's a tough situation, obviously, for the sellers in that position, but I think it's sometimes overlooked how invested realtors get into this sort of thing. I know for myself, if things aren't going well and my clients are stressed, I'm often bringing that home and feeling pretty stressed about it as well and trying to think of creative things to do to try to solve the problem and move things along. And so I think that general sort of sentiment of having to prepare people for the worst, ideally not hit that point. Fortunately for me, things all worked out. It just took a lot longer and maybe had more of an emotional toll on people than I anticipated. So that was something that I think was a consistent sort of theme of the year, of managing people's sort of expectations and their emotions through all that, as well as my own. On the positives and the highs, I think that for me, one of the big highs for me was obviously like my involvement with the board and stuff like that. I always loved being a part of that. I feel like last year was a breakout year from that in terms of attending conferences and making some big moves and talks about amalgamations and things like that. I really like getting invested in that sort of piece, and there was a lot of that now that the pandemic was done that wasn't restricted at all. And in terms of business itself, I think last year I was able to do a couple of deals with other agents in our office. I kind of co-listed them with people, and in particular there was one situation where I was working with, I was kind of helping Tiff. She was on vacation and helping her with one of her listings at that time. And there was an agent who was a little bit difficult to work with, seemed relatively new to the business, needed some of the paperwork explained to them, stuff like that. And in the time that I was going back and forth with them, everything went smoothly. We got the deal done and we moved it forward. But watching Tiff handle the rest of that situation was really cool, because she managed essentially both sides of these deals, but she did it with a smile on her face, and it was fun to be a part of all of that with one of our colleagues. It's always cool when you get a chance to work with a friend of ours, you know, and work closely with somebody and see how they operate, see how they manage people, and see how they manage their business. Keisha's here behind the camera, and she's also a fun one to be working closely with. So, yeah, I'd say that was probably one of the highs. When I look back on the year, I think watching her manage that was, and being a part of that was one of the highlights for me.
To add to that point, working with good people, taking this stuff home, people care. And this is kind of the root of why I joined the brokerage of Trillium West. Was you're kind of describing the ethos of the people that we bring on board to be a part of the brokerage. So, you know, what I got from even your lows, but even your highs, is that kind of surround yourself with these great individuals who really want the best for their client. You know, and I do think a lot of people get into this industry for the wrong reasons. So be it. There's a lot of different industries that do the same thing, but I can continually say that the people I work with at the brokerage, Keisha, yourself, there's the underlying tone is always about your client, right? Yep. So we care. So I'm just happy that you kind of summarize that even in both your stories there.
Yeah, it's clients and people in general, right? Like
no,
just
of course.
it's people in general and other agents and themselves too. It's amazing, especially last year with how much strain there was on realtors, how much self-care really came up as a conversation of taking care of yourself, making sure your family's in a good spot, but being around good people and surrounded by good people makes that a lot easier, right? So
agreed.
I guess on the note of a bit of a tense and slow year, let's talk about some of the stats here. I pulled up some of the notes that we had pulled together. And the general piece here is that December was a relatively slow month. It almost always is, right? And so we didn't see a ton of new listings hit the market. We're seeing some of the supply that's been sitting get chipped away at a little bit here. So overall inventory is dipping a bit, but I think already in January we've sort of seen things ramp up a little bit more, listings hitting the market, buyers getting back out and picking up the phone. So it's going to be interesting to see how this year plays out. But looking at last month, I think actually behind the camera here, Keisha made a good point last week that we're seeing a lot of people shift their listings. So they're pulling them off the market for sale and starting to lease them out, which is a new sort of thing. We haven't seen much of that in the last 5 years or so, especially not in this sort of scale and the number of people doing it. And so the lease market and rental market is becoming, there's a lot of inventory sitting on that front now. And I think a lot of people have the mentality that they're going to need to be renting. And so that is going to be a landscape, I think, that really develops over the next few years. And the rental market is going to become a much bigger one in KW, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you can't sell your house for the price you need, and no money's coming in, well, if you lease it out, at least you can get some money going towards your payments. The challenge I see there, though, is people are becoming landlords on the fly.
Yeah.
So I think there could be some room to educate, some room to put some programs together for landlords to properly understand, how to be a great landlord, how to manage their business. Because again, I see a lot of horror stories out of Toronto where, I hate my landlord. They put my rent up $8,000 this month, and they can't. And the landlord and tenant board can't even get out there and do anything about it. So, good point. Yeah, but I anticipate a lot of those leases or cancellation of listings to come back in January, February. So, yeah, I do expect a bunch of inventory coming up soon.
Yeah, I think the spring is going to be interesting. There's going to be a lot going on going into the spring, especially if there are shifts in interest rates one way or the other.
Yeah, but what was the report? Like 3.2% inflation inflation is up essentially. What was that? So people are talking about rate decreases and inflation's going up. I don't know how that makes any sense. So
Bank of Canada has some interesting decisions to make on that front to weigh out the two sides of this, one being combating inflation, but also preparing for the wave of mortgage renewals that are going to be coming in 2025, and understanding that 50% of mortgages are going to have to renew or refinance, or like properties are going to have to sell by 2025 because people won't be able to keep up with interest rates. So it's a tough balance that they're going to have to work through here. But inflation going up leads to us thinking of much more stressful spring, and maybe interest rates not coming down nearly as soon as some have anticipated.
Greater than lending, which is our in-house lending, also mentioned that when you were renewing, your lender wasn't allowing you to shop that rate around, and they were giving you crazy rates. So now I think they're pulling back, and now you can actually shop that around, which gives you a bit more flexibility in the competition and the rates you can actually get. So hopefully that helps some people out. But yeah, again, going from 2% to 5.5%, whatever that is, especially if you bought at the peak, it can be a challenging 2024 for some people.
Yeah. Prepare now for sure.
Yeah.
The other two big things I just wanted to touch on in terms of stats from December, something that was pretty interesting, I think, is that given the ups and downs and all the headlines that came out last year, our inventory and overall sales from December of 2022 and December 2023 were very, very similar. So even after all the chaos of last year, we're seeing a pretty similar number of transactions taking place in December, which is holding steady. Whether or not that's going to translate into a spring that's kind of similar to what we saw last year or not is still up in the air. But I just found that a little bit interesting. And then the other big talking point for me, especially in conversations with resale sellers right now, is days on market. During the peak of all the chaos in 2020, 2021.
2 hours.
2 hours things were selling. The average days on market, I think it was down to 5 or 7 days at one point.
I mean, we say 5, but literally all the listings we had probably went in 4 to 6 days, no problem.
Yeah, a lot of it was just an extra day added on for people waiting for deposits to get dropped off and stuff.
Yeah.
We're now up to 38 days. And the big note of that is that the motivation from buyers and the urgency of buyers has really shifted. And that's the way that I'm talking to my buyers too, and has been for the last several months, is there's not really much rush here.
No.
I'll express the interest to the agent, so we'll be in the loop if something does happen. But this isn't necessarily a situation where we can't go out and look at other properties in the meantime before preparing an offer. But also there's an element of leverage that comes with that. Some sellers get a little panicky after things get over a month. And so a little more wiggle room on prices and conditions and stuff like that is something you want to be thinking about over the next couple of months. So overall, pretty interesting, but nothing too different than what we talked about last month when we were reviewing November numbers. Pretty straightforward on that side. Now, you were mentioning earlier that the new build space has also kind of ramped up a little bit in terms of interest and people feeling out the waters, and that's maybe a sign of buyers in general picking up?
Yes. So I was in sales centers for November and December, and it was a lonesome time, but it was a time for us to kind of plan and ramp up the business for the new year. And I think that mentality is actually working for us. So what we're seeing is, from no traffic walking into sales centers, no calls, limited registrations, that being, going to a website or seeing a sign and signing up for future newsletters. But I'm getting multiple registrations a day, multiple calls a day. I'm getting 2 to 3 visitors on site as well. So the truth is, it's a huge GTA effect still. And the people coming in it is a combination of investors and end users, but GTA heavy. A few people from the neighborhood because our signage is here. I think that kind of stands out. But GTA is still coming down here, and there's that influence is still here. So yeah, interest has peaked up. Now again, our price point is very attractive at $535,000
at South Creek here.
At South Creek Towns, yeah. Plug South Creek Towns, $535,000. Closing Q1 2025. That was my quick plug. Sorry.
Yes. No, you got it.
Plenty of incentives. Call James. I just see activity ramping up again. So I don't know. I honestly thought it would be a slow burn, but I've already got 5 worksheets. A worksheet is basically the first step to putting an offer together. So people are active out there, and I've got some people ordering a few units. So it's been a positive experience in January for new builds at this price point.
Right. So you talked about worksheets there for a second. And so what does the process look like? So a worksheet comes in. That's step number 1. What's on a worksheet? What are you looking for?
So basically, I mean, there's a few steps, but the first is me just breaking the ice. I want to know who this person is, what they want, what they need, and then I can help them find the right product. Once we've done that, and if I answered all their questions, they can then ask for a worksheet, which basically outlines all of their pertinent information to put a contract together. So that's on file, and then I can basically send you an APS, an agreement of purchase and sale, and say, okay, ready to move forward. From that step, specifically with a condo, you get a 10-day cooling period, which allows you the time, which you didn't get back in, well, you might have back in COVID, to send that offer to the lawyer, have them review, send it to your lender, have them review, can you afford the actual home? And so based on your due diligence, you can actually make your decision in 10 days. But you've got your contract, you can do your due diligence, and that's how it works. On the 10th day, you bring the balance to your deposit, and then you're firm. You essentially have to close on it, or you forfeit your deposit, and or could be held for some liabilities for not closing.
Gotcha.
Cool. But yeah, it's been a positive experience. Do you have any other questions about the process?
I think when it comes to the financing of pre-construction or new builds like that, are there significant differences, you think, between resale and the new construction? Like I know
financing?
From a financing standpoint, I know that things about like HST or something that are often a conversation, and some builders, in my experience, will want to write up the paperwork in a way where HST reimbursements, for example, maybe go to the builder as opposed to the buyer dealing with that. How are you finding builders working around things like HST, which is applicable on top of prices generally, right?
And it's technically applicable to resale, but it's included. It's just an understanding.
Yes.
But with new builds, yes, HST is usually included, but there is some sort of stipulation from the builder that says that any sort of rebate is going to be written back to the builder. And so that rebate is usually, I mean, at this project, I think we talked about a $23,000 rebate, but you're forfeiting that by basically signing off on that waiver and allowing that builder to coop that.
So essentially, they're building it in the same way that a resale would.
You got it. You got it.
It's nice from a mortgage and finance standpoint that you don't have to pay cash.
No, of course not.
$23,000 to on top of everything.
And from an appraiser standpoint, with resale, these things are usually going to come in at appraisal, which is usually a positive. But yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. From the inquiries you've seen of places like South Creek, do you have a good pulse rate now of how many are investors that are reaching out to you versus end users? Or
I would say we're more investor than end user right now.
Right.
75, 25, 80, 20.
Okay.
The truth is a lot of the buyers can kind of come around last minute with an agent. Hence why we've got some contracts that say, you got to be working with an agent to know. But we like to ask this information up front so we can better help you. But yeah, investors are back. But again, I think it's price point driven. Right? So an investor can easily accept this price point and knowing that this product can get anywhere from $2,500 plus utilities a month. It's a bit easier to chew than getting a detached for 1.2
Yeah.
and then trying to work backwards there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's cool to actually be able to be in here and see it and see the finishes and stuff like that. I'm sure this won't be the last time that we talk heavily about new build stuff.
No, I hope it's not. But the idea, obviously, in this climate is to give a space for purchasers to understand what they're buying. You know, through COVID, it was like, here's a piece of paper. Do you want it? Yes or no? It's a floor plan. You can't feel, you can't experience. Well, here we're allowing you to come through and understand what the finishes could look like, the quality could look like, the floor plan could look like, and an option to look at maybe some upgrades, what things you could do down the road as well. So as we get back to normalcy, these things are incredibly important to fully have the buyer understand the entire process. And I think it's only fair, right? We're not talking about 200,000 anymore. We're talking about 500 to $1 million. So I think it's really important that if someone has a question, we're able to fully answer that. And having someone on site a few days a week to do so, I think is beneficial. And I thoroughly enjoy it. I love talking to people. I want more people to come through. And again, I think we're going to see that moving forward. So
yeah, absolutely. It definitely feels all around like things are ramping up a little bit. Buyers are now out of the holidays. They're trying to figure out what their plan is going to be, even if they're not buying this month or even this spring. It seems like people are putting feelers out now for what they're going to do. And when you're looking at stuff like this, that's going to close in a year. That's perfect.
Yeah.
If people are signing a new lease right now and trying to plan for what they're going to be doing in the future, this kind of thing makes a ton of sense. And from an investor standpoint, I'm sure a lot of people are anticipating interest rates to go down by the time they actually have to pull their mortgage and close. So it definitely makes sense to me that you guys will be busier down here. So fun that we got to do our first one of the year here. But really looking forward to maybe next week we'll do another one. Jay's on, or 2 weeks from now?
Yeah, man. I mean, every minute I spend with you makes me a happier guy. So just tell me when you want to get together. There's a cute little reel coming out soon. I hope you guys can see it.
Oh yeah, I think it'll be everywhere. Yeah, we'll make sure.
I'm gonna put
it's
some ad spend behind that for me.
Absolutely. All right, buddy. Thanks for making this happen again today.
Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate you coming down. And I hope everyone has a fantastic 2024 and a great year ahead. Jay's in Real Estate.
Take care.